I put my secret down to my success in my career is I still love what I do. I love what I do every single day.
What does it actually take to lead as a woman in this region?
We speak to ourselves far worse than we'd ever speak to our family or our friend. It's not just about being tied to a job, but being true to who I am as well. I've always felt incredibly safe, as I have wherever I've travelled in the Middle Eastern region, which is very difficult to communicate in the West.
I've always felt that if one was truly secure with who they are, what they've accomplished, what they have, it'd be easier for them to feel happy for somebody else and where they are and what they're doing.
Real queens fix each other's crowns.
But in the absence of faith, how do you decide what's important to you and what you won't compromise on?
To a certain extent, I can't fix other people's behaviours. I can only control my own. But I think there's a really, really fine line about how much you put out there and how much is ego and how much you shout about versus how much you do.
Comes back to the same question. Can women have it all, or can women do it all?
This episode is brought to you by nextaudio.net. You know, in a world where doom scrolling has become the norm, podcasts became my escape, my way of learning something meaningful through someone else's story. I've always been an avid reader and I never go to sleep without a book in my hand. But I reached a point where I wanted more than words on a page. I wanted to hear from people who had actually lived what they were talking about, people who had felt it, survived it, people who had lessons to share. And honestly, that's what led me to start this podcast too. Podcasting is no longer niche. Millions of people across the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the wider region now spend hours every week listening to creators they trust. From global shows like Mel Robbins, Diary of a CEO, and BBC podcasts, to regional shows produced right here in the GCC, like this one. Every guest I bring on, I choose intentionally. People who are willing to talk about what they've had to overcome and what they've learned along the way. And because faith and culture are the lens through which I see the world, those topics are woven into every episode. Because the listeners in this region wear their culture and faith with pride. It's part of who they are, and they deserve content that reflects that. But what people don't always see is what goes into making that happen. Alongside raising 3 children and studying for my master's, I spend hours researching guests, writing show notes, editing, distributing, but I do it because I believe my content will make a positive impact on the listeners. And that's why I want to tell you about Next Audio. Next Audio supports hundreds of regional podcasters and thousands of global shows, helping creators like me keep producing the content you actually want to listen to. They also make it easier for brands to connect with podcasts in a meaningful way across both regional and international shows. So, whether you're a listener, a creator, or a brand curious about this space, visit nextaudio.net. The link is in the description box below. What does it take to build a life that you're proud of and keep choosing it every single day? Today's guest is someone that I see up at the crack of dawn running in all weathers. And I've often wondered, what is she running towards? Because if you hear the kind of life that she's built in the boardrooms, in the newsroom, in the community, and at home, you learn that standing on podiums is just part of her story. Welcome to Reflections and Realizations. Today, I am so fortunate to invite someone who is a neighbor and a friend, Katie Golding. Katie is a Chief Marketing and Communications Officer. She's Forbes Middle East Top 10 Women in Marketing. She's a run coach and a mom of 2. And today, we're getting to know the woman behind the accolades.
Katie, welcome to Villa 58. I'm so glad you're here. So I want to start by sharing. I've always had a little girl crush on you. So I often see you running in the community or in the gym, and I turn around and say to Shabazz, Katie is up. So that's why I'm so excited to have you here today. I want to start by asking you, before the boardrooms, before the marathons, who was Katie Golding growing up?
So first of all, thanks for having me. It's amazing to hear that feedback as well, because I just get on with my life. And, you once said it to me in the gym and I was so like taken aback, like, I've touched someone that, it's nice to see. It's nice to get that feedback, right? Because we never normally get it.
We don't share compliments like women with women. You'll feel it or you just think it. But to actually share it, I think we can make someone's day. So I think it's good if we do that.
Yeah, I do. And do you know what? I've always grown up with that thing that if I can say something that's going to make somebody's day, then I will do. So I rarely get it back. So when you said it that day, I was like, oh God, it's something positive has come from what I do. But I grew up in Manchester, just on the outskirts of Manchester, in a town called Stockport. I'm an only child, and my dad was a PE teacher. So I grew up with sport kind of being at the heart of the family. I played squash for a long time, both my parents did, and I played at county level. So I was always fit growing up. And my mum had left school early, but gone back and educated herself after I was born. So she went and got a degree certificate after I was born and set up her own HR employment law company at a time when employment tribunals, discrimination cases were on the rise. And she was a really, really successful businesswoman. So I grew up in quite a happy household with two parents that worked really, really hard in quite normal circumstances. And I thought, I never imagined that I would leave Stockport. And for whatever reason, when I was 18, I went to university and then I never went back, I went back once for 6 months, but after that, I never went back.
So I wondered, did you ever think from Manchester that you would end up in the Middle East?
Never. When we got the opportunity to come and work in Abu Dhabi, I had to look it up on a map. So I'd been living in London for 10 years. I did that kind of natural progression. After my degree, I travelled. I went back to Manchester and I always wanted to work in advertising. I'd known from an early age that's what I was going to do. And I took a train down to London on a Thursday, got a job, and I started on the following Monday, literally turned up with a backpack at the age of 21. And I'd lived in London for about 10 years. I had a great career in London advertising agencies. I loved my life. I met my husband, Mike, and he had actually grown up around the Middle East. He was born in South Africa, but grew up in Oman and Saudi Arabia because his dad had built the airports and had been working there, in the 80s and 90s. And we were having those natural conversations around, is this going to be serious? Are we going to settle down? And Mike said, well, I can't get married until I've been traveling, first of all. So I packed a backpack and off we went. We spent 6 months around the world together. And then we came back to Manchester. And I thought we'd settle down. And I was so unsettled. It was untrue. It rained every day. I got a new job in an advertising agency in Manchester. I felt I'd taken a back step in my career. And one of our old colleagues phoned and said, would we like to go out to the Middle East? It was Mike's job. Would Mike like to go out to Abu Dhabi to work in one of the advertising agencies out there? And Mike said, well, I can't just leave Katie. And the gentleman said, well, why don't you both come? Like 2 for the price of 1 with a job offer. And it was me that pushed it. And here we are, 18 years later.
What did you think? Was it going to be a 6-month thing, a 2-year thing? What did you have in your mind?
We came for a year with a backpack. We left after 18 months with a backpack and a baby on the way. And we spent the next year and a half in Manchester where we had our first son. And again, we never settled. When we were pregnant with our second son, Felix, we had the opportunity to come back out, same client, Etihad Airways, different advertising agency this time. And Mike came back out and set up the agency, and I came, and we never looked back. We had the second child here, and both boys have been brought up here.
So then is that what led you to your career path with all the organizations that you work with here?
Kind of. So when we came back the second time, so I'd always worked in advertising agencies. I put my secret down to my success in my career is I still love what I do. I love what I do every single day. And when I was pregnant with Felix, I couldn't work because I was 6 months pregnant. We just got here. It was the wrong time to get a job. So we set up our own consultancy agency. So I had the opportunity to work, and Abu Dhabi at the time had still got the Creative Media Authority, which empowers people to set up their own entrepreneurial journeys. When Felix was about 3 months old, through my own consultancy, I got my first project, which was with Flash Entertainment at the time, to launch one of their big events with Franco Dragone, who's the creator of Cirque du Soleil. And I've never looked back. I've never not worked since. So as one of my agency jobs was actually launching the media zone here. So I naturally had built relationships and opportunities just came my way. I think there's a lot of skepticism about women in business here. I have never faced it from one day. In fact, it's been the opposite. Businesses have opened their doors to encourage me to work, to put a woman at the top. I've never seen any barriers about being around the boardroom table, and I just lent into it and went with it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that you've had so many senior positions, including Sky News Arabia. What does it actually take to lead as a woman in this region? Is it as stereotypical as people would imagine?
Well, I think the doors were open, so the opportunity was there. And I just had the confidence to walk through the door. And I think that that's a really, really important thing that I'd say to any woman, especially women going back to work after having babies. There's this kind of fear of, can I do it? Have I forgotten, what my skill is? Absolutely not. Some of the people that I see here and some of the mum friends that I met have been at the height of their careers in international cities around the world. But something changes when they become a parent and they lose some of that confidence. And I was lucky enough that I had the support system to just say yes.
I remember that when I first had my child as well, the anxiety, the lack of self-confidence, something happens. I don't know if it's physically or just hormonally, but you do doubt yourself.
Yeah.
And I still do it. I think it's because your life changes so much.
Yeah. And I think, look, I've always had a confidence. I'm quietly, sometimes loudly confident in myself. And I've always had this ability to just say yes. And there has been times, and there's still times, when I think, I'm terrified of doing this meeting. I'm terrified of doing this presentation. But I don't let it hold me back. And I think that, the hardest step for me, I've always said this, I've said it in my running and I've said it in my career, the hardest step is the first one. And as soon as you've done that, everything just flows. But I have to say I've been in environments where a combination of the opportunity has landed on my lap, but also I've been in environments that have really pushed me forward, senior leaders, leadership in this country that have championed me as well and given me opportunities. I mean, when I joined Sky News, it was supposed to be for a year. And I think this is another important thing. I've always positioned myself as somebody that gives back. So I went into Sky News Arabia, having been in the creative zone where I trained young Emiratis in their roles. And I said to Sky, I will come in, I will set up your Arabic team because it's all Arabic for 26 countries. I don't understand the content that's on the screen, but I will come in, I will train a team with the discipline to be able to do the marketing job properly. And then I will do myself out of a job. And I was there for 3.5 years and I chose to leave in the end. But 6 months into my tenure, there was a change in the CEO and they actually created a leadership team to run the organisation whilst there was no CEO. And there were 6 people on that team and I was chosen as one of them. First of all, I was a woman amongst men. And secondly, I was the only non-Arabic speaker in that room. And I remember when I saw the email go out to the company, I was like, have I got myself in this situation? And I was going on holiday the next day and I just, it terrified me. And I just thought, but this is the opportunity of a lifetime and I am just going to do it the best I can.
So do you think that kind of self-talk, building yourself up behind the scenes is what helps you to move those shadows of self-doubt?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. One is how we talk to ourselves, and I talk to myself really badly. And my running gives me that. It gives me a bit of a grace where I catch myself doing it. And I think that's something that we all do. We speak to ourselves far worse than we'd ever speak to our family or our friend. But I think that kind of confidence the quiet confidence of I know I can do it or I'm going to do my best. So sometimes I haven't always been able to do it, but I've always given it my best. That's one. Second, and Mike and I, obviously we do the same jobs. And when we were first here, we've seen people come to this market that say yes all the time, that do things because they love the lifestyle and they want to keep the lifestyle and they want to keep the job. Mike and I have always given ourselves permission to tell the truth. And that has kept us both in very, very good stead. So the way that I operate in work is with absolute brutal honesty. If I don't agree with it, I do have the confidence to say, even if it terrifies me. And I also have the guts to walk away if I don't agree with it. And I've been in that situation a few times.
I think that makes you fearless as well, because I don't think then you feel like you're tied to that job.
Yeah.
It's not like a pair of golden handcuffs to you. Yeah. It doesn't serve you. You're going to have an issue walking away.
Yeah, and also I'd be really unhappy if I didn't, my honesty, my truth, you talked about my upbringing. My grandma was the most honest person. My whole family are really honest. It's that kind of Manchester born and bred, say it as it is and don't be afraid to say it. And there's no such thing as can't. But I think that brutal honesty is something that if I stepped away from, I would be really unhappy in my soul. And it's not just about being tied to a job, but being true to who I am as well.
So Katie, you also worked in Saudi Arabia for a few years as well. And I think the media has a way of portraying it in quite a particular way. What was your experience as a Western woman working in Saudi Arabia?
Absolutely. And that was another moment where I was stood at the edge of a decision. And I knew I'd made a decision to leave Sky News because we'd ran the newsroom through COVID and I'd been in charge of the marketing. And, it was probably one of the toughest places to be, other than obviously on the front line during that period. The news was negative. It was taking a toll on my mental health. And I decided I need to step out and, have a few months off. And I've been talking to the Saudis. I mean, the one thing that I will say is I spent a lot of time in Saudi in the week, but I was very clear when I took that role that my life was in Abu Dhabi and my boys were in Abu Dhabi and that I would do it as a consultant and I'd fly in and fly out, but I couldn't commit to move into Riyadh. I think Saudi, like the rest of the world, and the rest of the Middle East, is painted in a really negative light. And I think once you're in, and the people that you work with and the people that you see in the daily life is very, very different to how it's portrayed in the Western media. And that was my experience in Saudi. Beautifully warm people. I'd walk into, and the difference, one of the differences I found in Saudi, and I predominantly spent most of my time in Riyadh, I have spent some time in Jeddah, is that the people that work behind the hotels, the taxi drivers, they're Saudis. So you get that real kind of crossroads of all different types of walks of life. I've always felt incredibly safe, as I have wherever I've travelled in the Middle Eastern region, which is very difficult to communicate in the West. I'd leave my hotel door open in the same way I leave my house door open here, because there is a safety in everything you do. So I think I felt safe, I felt warm. It's definitely on the edge of change. There were places that I went to in Saudi. There was events I ran, like Here Hub, which was a 5-day fashion event, where the most eclectic fashion is on the world stage. And it was cool. And it was, it was amazing to be there and to experience it. And I can't wait to see what the country does over the next few years with Expo as well.
So you mentioned about the news, and I think that really makes sense. You said you were exposed to so much news constantly that started to have an impact on your mental health. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's really interesting because with the last 6 weeks as well of what's been going on here, the first thing that Mike said is get your head out of the newsroom, because I went back to the habits of flipping between every single news channel to see, because I can read the nuances between different countries and how they, say different things and what's on Twitter versus fake news. I can hopefully spot fake news a mile off. But I automatically went back to the place that I'd been to in COVID, which was, I don't kind of consume everything and believe what I read, but I make my own opinion of it, as I think everybody does. But the more that you read that's negative, the more that kind of echo chamber and bubble kind of is created around yourself. So Mike said straight away, you've got to stop this. This is a rabbit hole that you're going down.
Boss has sent to me, get off Twitter, stop refreshing Twitter, stop following Al Jazeera. But it does, because news is predominantly negative. So even if you do make up your own mind or you discern between what's fake news, just the bulk of it is negative.
Yeah, and it's heavy, and you only have to, for somebody that's worked in a newsroom, I'm not particularly political, if that makes sense. But, you only have to read the language of the leadership in the West recently, and Trump saying that a whole civilization will die tonight. One sentence is so powerful and so difficult, so heavy to carry, that when you're hearing that and you're hearing it from different sides, I used to hear it 12, 14 hours a day. It really shifts. It shifts how you see the world. It shifts how you interact with people around you, and it shifts how you touch others. And obviously during COVID, I had that, and one of the most profound stories. So I was one of the only women generally, when you look at a newsroom, it's very male dominated, the men on the newsroom floor. And in a region like ours, some of the people that we work with have come from some of the most war-torn areas in the world. You know, I've got Palestinians, I've got, you know, Syrians on the newsroom floor. And we also called back all of our frontline journalists. So our war correspondents were back in the office, reporting in the office. And A, I was one of the only women, and B, I'm an older woman. So I did have this like motherly touch that people would come and have a cup of tea with me. And one of the frontline journalists came to me one day and sat in my office and was close to tears. And he said, I am terrified of this virus. He was a big guy, so he was automatically unhealthy. And he's been to some of the worst war-torn areas in the world. And he sat there almost crying with me because he was scared of the virus. And I was never scared of the virus, but I was scared of the impact around us and what it was having on people, because I could see that and I could feel it. And that's one of the things that I learned from myself during that period, is how much of other people's weight I carried, because I sense emotions and I pick them up and I carry them. But it was a fascinating time to be in the newsroom.
It's contagious in a way as well. Like I remember even during this war, if I was on WhatsApp, then my head was thinking, should I be packing a bag? Should I have my passport ready? Should I be ready to flee? And those thoughts wouldn't have been in my head had I not heard somebody else say that. And I even remember saying to my mom on the phone during this time that if I wasn't on the news, I wouldn't even know that there's a war going on. Because except for the children being home, life hadn't changed.
Yeah.
We were really normal in so many ways. We'd be going to, yes, Ferrari World as normal, shopping as usual, cinemas as normal. But it was the news that was telling me that there's war going on very loudly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, you know, we've got to be really careful on who we listen to. And I think that's been a big learning for me as well, is who I let in, not just what news I let in or what social media I let in, but also which people I let in my life, because the people that we surround ourselves with do dictate how we feel about ourselves.
So it's protecting the peace, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's took me a long time to learn. And, you know, with age comes wisdom.
Yeah, I think something happens after 40, when all these things we start prioritizing that we never prioritized before.
Yeah, I think I'm a slow learner because it took me to about 48. And then I realised
you're catching up.
Yeah, I'm catching up now. I'm a lot wiser.
So, Katie, as well as you've talked about your positive experiences working with men in a very male-dominated profession, what's been your experience with women? Do you find that women support women as well, just as much working in the way you work?
I'd like to say I hope so, but it's not always been my experience. And that might be two-way as well. You know, I always think I've always tried to create a platform where I shine a light on other women. That's why I do the mentorship. And whether that's in sport or in business or just generally in, you know, everyday life, I think it's really important that women pull together and, you know, support each other. Real women fix each other. Real queens fix each other's crowns, as they say. But in work, I have come up against, whether it's been jealousy, and I don't always think it's jealousy in work, but maybe it's jealousy of my fitness or jealousy in other areas, where I can't put my finger on it, but my intuition is very strong, where my gut would tell me that I've been held back for whatever reason. And that's been throughout my career, from being quite at an early age, right up to today.
How do you deal with that?
I think there's a lot of things now that I listen to, whether it's self-help, whether it's, you know, podcasts, that to a certain extent I can't fix other people's behaviours. I can only control my own. So wherever possible, I do try and model what I would like to see in myself. I think there's certainly been areas where I've got upset about it, times where I've got upset about it and I've overthought it. There's times certainly where I've also suffered from work burnout, partly because, and it's never been about the job. It's never been about the amount of work. The times where I've really suffered from burnout in work have been the times where I've stepped into a room and I've not always felt that I'm in a positive environment or that people haven't got my back. The times where the teams have been the weakest or the times when there's been personal agendas put on the table. You know, I've never felt unhappy in one day in a sterling 28-year career because of the work. It's always been because of the people. And whilst sometimes that's been female, it's also been male as well. And it's also been me. You know, I think we kind of have a role to look at ourselves and say, how can we all be better?
I think it also how secure you feel within yourself makes such a difference as well. I've always felt that if one was truly secure with who they are, what they've accomplished, what they have, it'd be easier for them to feel happy for somebody else and where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I always feel it's always internal.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, do you know what? I think that's what's really shook some people. There is probably since I was, a long time since I've had kids and since I've been here, I am really satisfied with what I've achieved. And I'm actually a really happy person. And I think that shakes people. And sometimes I've seen it when, you know, you're a mirror on other people. And it's took me a long time to learn that sometimes when I feel like I'm seeing bad behaviour, it's because that person isn't happy. It's absolutely nothing to do with me. And obviously sometimes it shakes me. But I have now learned my own kind of mechanics of how I just keep that at bay. That's not my problem today. I'm not going to deal with that. What I can control is how I fall out from it.
It's not a me issue. It's a them issue. So you can separate the two.
Yeah. And also, by the nature of who I am, I've tried to fix other people. And then that's just drawn me in so much. I've done it with friends. I've done it at work. I've done it where I just then give so much that I'm completely depleted. And that's another thing that I've learned. You know, I can show, you know, I can help. I will help anybody if they ever came to me and asked me for something. I can help and I can show you the path, but I can't give you everything I've got because the things that I love, which is my family and my running, are far more important than me giving my energy somewhere else.
You probably have learned the hard way.
So I knew when I took the job in Saudi that it was going to be an opportunity and a trajectory, set my career off on a different trajectory. But I spent a lot of time away from home, and it was at a time when I really wanted to spend more time with my kids. And it was a family decision. And, you know, Mike has always been supportive, and he was like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. You go for it. So I did. And I had one non-negotiable, which was my fitness at the time. I started in the beginning of September and I was running my first proper marathon about 20 days later in Berlin. And the beauty of Saudi is that I used to stay in hotels and I had a treadmill, and the guys would let me in the gym anytime. So I literally trained for the last few days of a marathon in Saudi and then went on to run another 4 or 5 while I was there because I had the time to train. But I did, you know, it did take its toll, and kind of working there for 3 years and traveling and being away from my boys and working in the media, which is 24/7. And by this point, I was running the marketing for 35 media brands globally and the team to run it. So, you know, there was never like a day off or a moment off. There was always something happening. And it was 3 years later, I'd qualified for the Chicago Marathon. I'd gone out to Chicago. My dad and his wife had come. I was really tired when I landed. And I got there and I'm thinking, why am I so tired? Because I run a mega job, I've flown around the world, and I'm about to run a marathon. Like now I look back and think, God, no wonder you were tired. And I couldn't sleep the night before the marathon for jet lag. I was up at 2 o'clock. I was on the start line by something like 7 a.m. And it's the only time I got to 35K. I was trying to run a qualifier for Boston. I got to 35K, that qualifying time was slipping. And at 35K, I just screamed, something's going to give. Something's got to give. And I knew it wasn't going to be my running, and I knew it wasn't going to be my family. And a decision was made at 35K at the back of the marathon that I'd had enough of the role that I was in. And I didn't hit the time I wanted, but still ran a really respectable, it was 3 hours 56. Crossed the start line and said to family, something's got to change. Got back on a flight, flew straight to Saudi, ran a 5-day event. It was an all-nighter most nights. I knew that was my kind of last big event for the company I was working at, and set off on a path to look for something that was closer to home again.
So I'm hearing this and I can hear it's for your family, running, and then your career. And your career can't come before family and running. And coming back to running, I see you in all weathers. In spite of the demanding job that you do and everything that you juggle, you are up every morning around the neighborhood or around the mangroves running. What gets you out of bed in the mornings?
So the running's for me. You know, I'd love to say it's to inspire my boys, or it's for the awards, or it's not. But actually, it's the one thing that gives me clarity and it gives me space to think. It's where I have my best ideas. It's what's kept me fit. You know, if I'm going to put a vanity lens on it, it's what makes me, you know, feel like I look good. So everybody has to have something for them. And for me, it's running. And I do believe that if I don't get that in at the start of the day, that the rest of the day doesn't go well. I also, you know, I say I'm a happy person. I can be quite moody, and the running has always controlled my moods. I'm a very creative person, and I think with creativity comes highs and lows, and the highs are very high and the lows are very low. And the running for me gives me an equilibrium. So you know, Mike will often say, just go out for a run, you're driving me mad. And I have to go, and I know I have to go. I feel I have to go most mornings. So I think, you know, that selfishly has 100% been for me.
So what does your morning look like?
It's chaos. And in the last few weeks, I've really struggled to get out of bed in the morning as well. I'm actually trying to go more at night time because obviously with homeschooling, which I don't do anything other than scream at someone from across a room at.
To get on your live, it's time for your session.
No, luckily mine are a little bit older now, but going back to those COVID days, I remember thinking, I've got people in the newsroom recording, you know, the daily update for COVID. And I've got pots and pans thinking Bohemian Rhapsody because some music teachers told Felix off for not doing his music. And I'm just like, this is the most surreal experience that I've ever done. Like making things float in a paddling pool, yet I'm on the call with a big boss about, you know, the viewership. It was hilarious.
I think COVID normalized that for us. So then when we were doing it the second time round, we were like, meh, it's quite normal to have chaos going on in the kitchen and a science lesson over there and a fight in the other room.
Yeah, absolutely. And like humanised the world, right? I think there was loads of good things and bad things that came out of COVID. But the one thing is you see people as humans. And we've all taken that into our ongoing daily life a little bit, that you can see. I think I see it more when people are about to break. I was such a machine before in so many ways that like, don't bring your personal problems in. I'm not interested, you know, blah, blah, blah. That it just get the job done, get the job done, get the job done. That now I actually see where people have different tolerance levels and when they need to pull back and when they need a break or when they need to go for a walk or have a cake or whatever it may be. You see it in people. But no, this time round, what do my mornings look like? I get up and go to work as soon as I can. If I stay around the house, there's just a tension. Like I think it's just a busy house, you know, 2 boys, the dog, that if it doesn't run like clockwork, it doesn't run at all. And we always say don't lie around, because once you do, it makes the day even more of a mountain to climb. So we're actually quite efficient in the morning. It does help that we've got help at home as well. And that's the one thing that everybody always says, how do you do it all? We live in an environment where we're empowered and we have support. And, you know, we have a wonderful nanny, Joyce, that's lived with us for 10 years that makes our shit show function like this. And, you know, that helps massively.
It makes such a difference having the support, because I think it's also important to be honest that we're not doing this by ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very British thing about not showing your heart and just being quite almost robotic. This is me, I'm professional, I can get on with things, and the chaos that's going on behind the scenes, we don't want to share that because it might make us look weak.
Yeah.
We do that a lot, I feel.
Yeah, I do. And like there's always chaos in our life. Like not a day goes by where something isn't wrong. You know, this week I was late a few times because, you know, I wanted to speak to one of my children in the morning who's slow to start with his schoolwork, or the other one's got his exams and, you know, I wanted to check. Or I'd been for a run. You'd know this because you're my neighbour. I'd accidentally left the car door open because I'm ditzy. I'd come back and the car was full of mosquitoes. So, you know, and I get to work and I'm all flustered and scratchy and it's just like, oh.
I'm laughing because I did that last week. And Shabazz just said, I had to go inside and spray the car. I don't know what happened.
Why did they go in as well? I couldn't work out why they'd all gone in the
what's
car.
in the car? There's nothing in the car. There's no one to bite in the car at that time. But it's true. It just frazzles you and something gets missed, but that's okay.
Do you know what? You say you've got a girl crush on me. There's a lady called Alice Law. She's now based in Dubai, but she's British, and she wrote Unstressable with Mao Gaudat, and we held her at an event recently. And I've got a massive girl crush on her. In fact, it was me that said, oh, let's hire this lady. She's just the epitome of grace and the way that she talks about things. But her whole premise is it's the little moments. It's the mosquito in the car. It's I've been to the gym and took the same pair of shoes, but different colours before now. So I've got a gold shoe and a silver shoe on all day. It's the little micro stressors that actually create the big break. And if you can kind of laugh through the micro stressors or just eradicate those, then your day goes well.
It takes the stress away because you've made it smaller.
Yeah. But also, I create my own stress, right? I don't know why I look at my WhatsApp before I look at my husband in the morning, and I look at my WhatsApp and I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Or I look at the news again and it's negative. So, her whole premise is take away the things that you're doing to yourself that make your day more painful.
Yeah, and there is a right way to start the day and there's a wrong way to start the day. And I know what the wrong way is, and I'll still do that. I'll still check the news before I get out of bed.
Yeah, it's such a bad habit. And going to bed, which then stops you sleeping at night. Yeah. Or my worst one is doing it at 2:00 in the morning, which is then even worse.
You wake up and you start scrolling.
Yeah.
But at least we can admit that these habits are problematic and we're trying to be better, and sometimes we're failing.
Yeah.
But it's the trying that counts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or catching yourself in the moment and recognising that you need to change, I think, is important.
So you're currently training for the Boston Marathon right now?
Yes.
What does training look like?
Well, it's taken a bit of a hit this time. So I've been trying to qualify for about 5 years. I didn't start to run until I was 41. And I ran a 10K in Abu Dhabi and came second in my age group and was like, oh, I can run. And that's kind of how I discovered it. Anyway, long story short, I set this goal, and you have to run a time qualifier goal for Boston. And I've qualified twice, but only made the cutoff this year. And it just beautifully timed with my 50th birthday. So this has been a lifelong, like a kind of goal for me in the last 10 years, not lifelong, but kind of, it's the one thing that I want to do. Training has been, I've had a really, really good training block. So I started quite early. I started about 15 weeks out and gradually built up. And in that training block, I've had 2 PB half marathons, one of which I won the over 40s for. It was the last race I ran at 49 and won it. First half marathon I've won as well. And then about 20 days ago, I started with a niggle in my hip. And I have never had an injury in a marathon training block. I have never not been able to run. And so it's terrified me a little bit. So I've pulled back the last 2 weeks. I know I'm fit enough to run it. I know I'm strong enough, potentially, if I can get on top of the injury, to run a PB. Although I don't care about that right now, because right now I care about getting to the start line and finishing. And I ran this morning 15K and that niggle is still there. But I did long enough to know, hopefully I can get to the end. But equally, I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace as well. I think with everything that's been going on with the interceptions overnight and the war with Iran, I haven't had a lot of sleep. And rest is so important when you're at this stage in a training block. So there was a point about 4 weeks ago where I didn't even think the flights would be going to get me there. So as much as I can, touch wood, I'm going to get there. I'm going to stand on that start line and I'm going to do my best to get to the end.
Because what does that give you in life that nothing else does? Because you're so committed and there is a war going on and you do have a niggle in your hips and the weather is poor today and there's always something going on in life. But what is it that just keeps you so driven?
So I work better with routine. So I think I actually love the marathon training blocks that I do. And as soon as I finish this one, I'll be on to the next one. I'll give myself a couple of weeks break and then I'm hopefully doing Sydney in the end of August. And then when that's done, I'll be on to the next one. Because what it gives me is a structure. And I've said it before, if I've got no kind of structure in my day, I'm all over the place. But if I have a structure and I know I've got to do 1, 2, 3, then the day runs like clockwork. And then I just, every day is a week and every week is a month. And that structure gives me something to focus on and gives me a reason to keep doing what I do. But I do find myself at the end of a long run. So I as I say, I'm quite creative and I have a lot of noise in my head. And there is a point around about 7K on a 10K run where I just have the most peaceful feeling and clarity of thought. And I find that really comforting. And then in the marathon, that's just the sense of achievement and just having that feeling for 3 hours. There's just nothing else like it.
So it's not about the winning.
The ego in me would say that if I was running a 10K, it's about the winning. And that's a really interesting side, because I'm a great believer that you don't have to run fast to run. You know, I run with so many women and men that just go out there to do it. And, you know, but people say to me, but I'm not a runner. And I'm like, you're moving, you're running. It doesn't matter how fast you go. For me, if I'm doing a 5 or 10K, I want to win it. Marathon, less so. So, you know, I'm not going to lie, there is an ego in some of it, in the fast bits, yeah.
Yeah. I know that there are so many races and marathons that you have won, but I also know something about you, which is that you are hesitant to post or share your achievements. And I know that because you had to think twice before posting. I think it was Woman of Media Award with Vanity Holdings.
Yeah.
You had to think twice, Katie. Why do women shrink their achievements?
That's a really interesting question. And one I've thought long and hard about. Because of the job that I do, I could amass thousands of followers. I could put my social media profile out there and I could build a profile. I know how to do it. And sometimes, you know, when people look at me as the marketing director of a certain company, sometimes they're like, oh, you know, you've not got that many followers. I feel that, and I've purposely done it, and I've purposely not shouted about my achievements. And I'm also a big advocate that women shouldn't shrink their voice, and that if I've got a voice in a platform, I should use it. But I think there's a really, really fine line about how much you put out there and how much is ego and how much you shout about versus how much you do internally and with your smaller community, to support your smaller community. And I've also worked with quite a lot of people in the public eye that have an external profile, but when you meet them are not necessarily as nice as the profile portrays. So there's a brand externally, but a different person on the other side. And that's always made me wary. It's actually quite funny because I have got an ego, you know, I think everybody's got an ego. And I once actually Googled, am I a narcissist? And Google told me I wasn't because I was Googling it. I couldn't be, which made me laugh, made me chuckle. But I find that whole, what we're doing with the social media space and telling people what they should be and having these really loud voices, it's a little bit at odds of who I am, which is like, let me show you, let me do it, let me deliver the results, and then everything, then the accolades will come. So I've made a conscious decision that everything I've been awarded, Forbes, Vanity Holdings, there was one a couple of weeks ago which I chose not to publish because it wasn't the right time. I chose not to accept actually because it wasn't the right time. There's been a couple of these awards that I've earned because the results have been there, not because I've been out shouting and creating an exterior profile. So
you're saying
about it.
You're doing it for yourself rather than showing it to others? Or is it that you're questioning your sincerity? Like, what is it that you're doing? Because you're not shrinking yourself. That's not what you're doing here.
No, I don't think I am shrinking myself, because I would happily sit in a room like this and talk about kind of what the successes are and what I think has been the secret to getting to that platform. I just don't feel I need to brag about it. And I think there's a really, really fine line. You know, I'd much rather, I am much more comfortable in a one-on-one mentorship situation where somebody would come to me and say, how do I get to that next step? Or how do I get to the start line of a marathon? I'm much more comfortable in that space and I'd give that person anything in terms of the advice, the support, the training to get there, than me going, look at me, look at me, look at me on an external platform.
So your audience matters, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, and why are we here? I'm not here to please a million people that don't know me. But my circle that's close, it's really important that they get the best of me and I give the best to them.
And it matters what they think of you.
Yeah.
As opposed to the
Yeah.
wider.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And, you know, I often look back with the job that I've done is, could I have been in front of the camera? You know, my mum always said, oh, you should be in front of the camera. And there was a time where I probably would have wanted that, but I've never pushed it. I've always been the one that's kind of behind the camera. And yes, I've had my opportunity to shine, and when I have, I've took that, but I've never chased it. And we are where we are.
So
it
sounds like you do things very intentionally, very thoughtfully. So you will think about posting. Is there a purpose? Is this beneficial? Should I be posting? And I think that's something many people on social media should be doing more of. Think about why they're doing it before they're doing it.
Yes.
Is it serving them or is it serving someone else? And I think if people started having those kind of introspective conversations with themselves, they might maybe post a lot less than they do.
Yeah. And you know what? I would love to share more of my difficulties as well. Like, I am very curated in what I share. And, you know, I would love to talk more openly about some of the struggles. But not the world hasn't got my best interests at heart as well. And it's not just me. It's, you know, we've got a family image like everybody, you know. We all care about what people think, and it's not just affects me, it affects the kids, it affects my husband, it touches work. But I'm actually really careful who I talk to about what.
So one of the things that does inspire me about you, and is something I do follow on social media, and this is the work that you're doing with a young lady who has Downs, I believe, and autism, and you're her run coach.
Yeah.
Tell me, what drew you to that?
So first of all, Noor is so pure that I thoroughly enjoy the time I spend with her. And it's been an absolute joy, however long the journey lasts. And it's been about 12 to 18 months now. So I was doing a series of films for the Abu Dhabi Marathon, and we wanted to take a cross-section of women in the society who were very old from different walks of life. And I was one of those women. And Noor was one of the other. And I was behind the camera on this occasion. I did my interview separately, and then I was running the project. So we filmed Noor in my friend's house, and because it was quiet and there was less sensory kind of issue, you know, challenges for Noor. And we were filming her about her journey. She was talking to camera off a prompted auto cue with her mum. She's achieved amazing things. She's just won the Ocean Man Inspirational Woman and become one of their ambassadors. She swam 3K. She's exceptional on her bike. She does lots with kind of triathlons. And her mum was saying, you know, she's a great swimmer, which she is. She's a great cyclist, she is, but she's not very good at running. And she's got some challenges, as, you know, people with Down syndrome have physically with a sport like running. And she hasn't got a run coach. And I'd literally just qualified as a run coach out of passion, had no intention of training anyone. And classic me went, oh, I'm going to just throw myself in at the deep end. I'm going to go from having never trained someone to having trained someone with so many kind of needs. But I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to lean into it, and we're going to have fun. And I said, oh, I'll do it. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. So we went out to the track, and then gradually over time, we've trained roughly once a week. And her mum showed me tricks, and I've learned a lot about what she needs in terms of developing her hand-eye coordination. So I've brought games into the mix, like throwing balls while you're running and things like that. Anyway, Noor's just succeeded in running her own. From not being able to run 1K when we met, or struggling to run 1K when we met, she's just independently ran her first 5K, which is an amazing achievement.
I love that. I mean, clearly supporting other people is also something that's important to you as well, because I have no problem sharing that the reason why I'm on YouTube today is because you reached out to me. I didn't even ask you for any advice, but you messaged me to say, consider going a bit bigger, consider getting in front of the camera. And I love that you showed up for me like that without me even asking. So clearly community work is something that you're also drawn towards.
Yeah, I mean, I get a massive joy out of working with others and just seeing like the light on your face. I mean, I remember, I'm so proud of you, by the way. It's so great to see how far you've come and to be sat here. I promised I would as well, and to be actively wanting to do it, you know, and sit here and talk to you. is an amazing achievement, and the quality of what you're doing is excellent, which is great. It's great. But I remember you mentioning it, and it was almost like, well, why? Why are you questioning it? Why not? And then I remember your face just lit up, and the next week you came and you sought some professional help, and you'd done your first one, and then you created the setup. And I don't know, there's something in me that I almost see when people have a barrier. And because I think I'm always a yes, say yes to everything. There was a great visa ad in the 80s, which was for 1 year, you just say yes. And I just like, okay, just say yes, just do it, and just go with conviction and pretend you can do it, and the rest will fall into place. That when I see that hesitation in others, but I know that they really want to do it, I can spot it a mile off.
And also giving back is one of your things as well. Again, I learned on social media where you said this is your next priority now, is that I want to start giving back.
Yeah, what goes around comes around. Great believer in karma. I enjoy giving, I think. And so both Mike and I are only children, and I think one of the things that has been ingrained in both of us since the beginning of our days is this perception that only children spoil. And I always remember being a little girl and my mum and dad saying, share, you must share. And whenever we went on holiday, they brought me a toy so that other kids would gravitate to me. So at one point it was a massive inflatable turtle, and I was like the most popular person in this swimming pool in Spain or Portugal or wherever it was. And so it was ingrained in me to share. Now, there came a point in our 30s where Mike and I were always at the bar and we were always skint, and we were like, are we doing something wrong? Because we seem to be the only one that's like buying everybody drinks. And we are, as a couple and as individuals, incredibly generous with everything that we have in our time, to the point that sometimes we used to look at each other and go, we can be a little bit selfish this time. But we both get a pleasure out of entertaining, giving, sharing. And again, I think kind of that only child syndrome is being around others and seeing joy from others, I think is really important.
I love that, because I remember when I came to your Easter hunt party that you did a few weeks ago, and I remember thinking, her children aren't even little children who'd be running around looking for Easter eggs, but you organised something knowing that the families would be coming with young kids who would love to do an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah.
So I really think you do think about other people and how can I bring joy to other families and other friends.
Yeah, massively. And we all love an Easter egg hunt. We never grow old.
It was a lot of fun. And I think it was recently as well where we talked about... yes, I think it was in the same barbecue where you shared that in every occasion, whether it's a social celebration or whether it's a party or even in hard times, usually there's alcohol, and usually the occasion is marked with alcohol.
Yeah.
And you said that this is something that you could have very easily been drawn into as well.
Yeah.
But yet you didn't. So what's kept you disciplined in regards to your relationship with alcohol?
I think this is a fascinating subject that historians in years to come will look back on. So I think particularly from our generation in the UK, you know, I kind of grew up when I was a teen and ladette culture was the big culture. You know, we were encouraged to go out and drink with the men, and that was, you know, in every brand, on every TV program. So I grew up in that environment. You know, my parents were massive drinkers. You know, they were big into the sport anyway. But I grew up in an era where it was championed, you know, Freshers' Week at university. It's encouraged to drink so much you don't know your own name. And kind of just looking back, and, you know, one of the beauties about living here and one of the beauties about traveling is that you see other cultures, other environments, you know, other religions, and your mind is so open to lots of other things. And having lived here, you know, there's not the same kind of pressure that when you go to a party, the alcohol's flowing. And you can't be a runner and a partier at the same time. So there was obviously kind of conscious decisions I've made along the way as well. But even kind of periods in my life have been defined by alcohol usage. And I've, you know, like kind of being pregnant, the topic of conversation at the NCT is, what's your first drink going to be when you've had a baby? I mean, that's not normal. You have a baby, let's have a Prosecco play day. And I was always leading the charge. The Prosecco was always flowing at my house. That's just by the nature of who it is. But now when I look back at society, why is that healthy and why is that normal? And why are we encouraging anybody, not just women, to drink themselves silly? And again, COVID was a massive shift for me. So, I'd fall into that classic, have a drink on a Friday night to kind of get rid of the week and the stress of the week. And COVID happened and I could see everybody out partying in the gardens. Most of my friends back in the UK, summer's come early, the Barbie's on, the beer's flowing in the garden. And I looked at my husband, Mike, and I was like, the information we're getting through the Sky News newsroom this is going to be going on for 18 months. There is no party in our back garden every night because I know the kind of people that we are and we would be hosting the barbecue every night. I said, we're going to be raving alcoholics after 3 months if we do this. We have to find a balance. And that's where the running came from. So the first month I climbed Everest in the Stairwell. I don't know if you know this.
No.
So our house was like yours, was 3 floors. So me and a few friends took on a challenge in their own buildings to keep fit, and we climbed the equivalent of the steps of Everest over a month in our house. We broke it down. I had the kids doing it. The dog was chasing me up the stairs, everything.
How long what did that take? Like,
it was something like, I can't remember now, but it was something like 50 flights a day over the 30 days. Uh-huh. So my friend Carrie did it. Rima and Paul lives in the World Trade Center, and he's on the 70th floor. So he just started parking in his basement and walking up the stairs. So a few of us did it as a challenge. It was actually really good fun. Finished that challenge, obviously month 2, what we're going to do. So a few of us, again, ladies, not runners, we did a marathon a week for 4 weeks and we broke it down. It was 5K a day. So we just kept each other going and created that challenge. And then we got a bit bored of the challenges, but I just got incredibly fit. So, and that was the fork in the road for me. And then I realised that once I'd cut alcohol out of my life. And again, I wasn't a raving alcoholic, but I loved a glass of wine every now and again. But as soon as I cut that out of my life, my sleep was better, my mental health was better, my fitness was better, I was a better parent, better wife. So it's a no-brainer, really. It's quite...
So you had to choose, and you just made the choice.
I moderated.
They couldn't coexist
at
that level together. Your running, which is at that level, but also the alcohol that could have been, in excess too.
No, and, one of the questions that you asked me is, how do I do it all? Well, I make the wise choices. So, I do find that if I don't drink, my career's flourishing, my running's flourishing, my fitness is flourishing. That's a choice. That's a choice I make. And I get more things done when I'm in a better space.
I remember you asked me as well something about my faith, and it really got me thinking when you said that I sometimes think it's easy for people who have a faith to almost have a blueprint as to what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And it's true, because often I'm going through something really hard in life and I might not want to do something, but my faith says this is how you should be responding. This is what you should be doing. And I do it because I follow the blueprint. But in the absence of faith, how do you decide what's important to you and what you won't compromise on?
So first of all, your listening is an absolute, just for a tissue, it's a superpower. Because, these are like kind of passing conversations that we've had. We've never had an in-depth conversation. And I just think you've obviously got such an inspiring way of picking up on something, kind of knowing that there's something deeper that falls beneath. So I've obviously spent a lot of time in this country and a lot of time with people that do have really strong faith and religion at the core. And I think it's like a map. It gives you a guide. There's a problem. You follow the guide. Somebody's passed away. It's like you find a way to accept it. And that gives you something to always kind of go, there's a reason. There's a bigger reason. When you haven't got that guidebook, it makes it quite difficult to follow. Yeah. And that's the thing that probably scares me the most about our life without that guidebook, is how do we make the right choices in the darkest hours? Does that make sense?
Totally. But it takes the thinking away from it, but it also takes the emotion as well. Like, even in the war, for example, there was a lot of fear of this might happen. But then there was a belief system, which is what's going to happen is going to happen anyway, regardless of if there's a war going on or not. And that even navigated me through this time as well. So I often really wonder, how is it without it? Because it really dictates even my thought process. I might be feeling something else, but then I'll be telling myself, you shouldn't be thinking that because your faith says that's not how you approach it. So I'm not saying it's negative sometimes, but it's also hard as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're doing something that maybe you might not feel like doing. So there's an internal conflict that I have with myself often as well. So that I can see both sides as well.
But I just see so many of my friends that follow a faith it's called blind faith for a reason, right? They just trust in that process. And, my Mike's quite laid back and he's always like, trust in the process. Whatever will be, will be. And I'm like bouncing off the walls thinking of every single scenario. And, naturally we've got different roles to play. And as a mother, I'm the one that's got scenario A, B, catastrophe C, D, E, F. And that's heavy to carry. And I make my life so much harder by thinking of plan A to Z and every single solution that I wish I could have just sat there having a cup of coffee, not worrying about it, having a chill.
Follow Mike's way more.
Do you know what? So my younger son, my older son, Freddie, he's always had a wonderful, wonderful way about him. That he is he's very creative and he's got lots of ideas. But from being very little, he's been unapologetically who he is. So he'd do really naughty things and he'd be like, did the crime, do the time. And, there's been times where he's like I'm really sorry I did that. And, I feel bad for it. But he's always accepted who he is. And he's quite calm with it. I use the phrase, be more Fred in my head. I'm like, just be more Fred, he'll be fine. Just like it'll roll off his shoulders. I just think it's a great way to be.
It's so funny how they end up being your teachers in a way that you couldn't even imagine. But
Yeah.
you are raising these two wonderful boys. I see them in the gym. They're such respectful, really nice boys. And they're watching you as well. Yeah. So what do you hope that they learn by watching how you live your life?
So I know that it's gone in, and it's not just me, it's their dad as well. Mike's he's a wonderful dad. They see hard work and they see tenacity. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they see laughter, a lot of times at home and kind of fun. But there's been times where it's been really difficult. I mean, you live next door. You must have heard me shout F off a few times through the wall. Like I when they were little and just controlling two boys or not controlling two boys and just trying to deal with the fallout was incredibly difficult. There was times where, we bought Freddie before he was born, German and French and Spanish flashcards. They'd never come out of the box. And by the time he was 4, all we wanted was to make sure he'd got his own teeth and he'd stayed out of jail. It was like, there was a point where we really re-questioned our parenting. The phone calls I've had from school, I can look back and laugh at now, but there was a point where I had to go in dark glasses. It was awful. But our oldest son turned around probably about 2 years ago. He really got into his health and fitness, started playing football. He's always in the gym. And he just turned around and said, I see how hard you and dad work. And it's in me. And I've got to work hard. And the harder I work, the more success I'll get. And he went from never playing football to being the captain of the football team. And what's really inspiring is when he couldn't make the football team, he decided to set up his own, and he talked Mike into buying them all jerseys, printing Nando's chicken on the proper professional jerseys. They cost Mike about £500 to import. They ripped Nando's off because the football club's called Chicken Wave, and they created this football team. He then created, so they had somebody to play with, the opposition team and called it Halal Wings because it was all the local kids. He then talked somebody into opening a football pitch, and the teachers at school who had originally said, Freddie wasn't behaving, it's an elite school, was he getting the academics that he needed? He actually taught them into umpiring on their day off. So I was just like, like there's something's rubbed off somewhere along the line that I've got absolutely no doubt. And our youngest son, Felix, has followed the same path. He's just turning 13. He's really committed to his boxing. He goes to the gym. He's a lovely boy. Both beautiful boys.
Clearly you are doing a great job and they are watching you and they're picking it up from you and from Mike.
Yeah, I hope so. And a lot of the time, easing off, I think that's the only thing that I would say is the harder it got, the more I came down, the more the hammer came down. And I think this is a great lesson. And I've seen this behaviour as well in work with my teams, is the more it was out of control, the more I started to micromanage. The more I micromanage, the more out of control it gets. It's actually, I can't control it. It's just give them the map. This is what we expect. This is the guardrail. Off you go.
It's so funny you've said that because Shabazz and I have just spent 1 year in therapy for our children and we've just learned the same thing. Step away. Don't let them make their mistakes. Let them learn themselves. Yeah. Don't be on them so much because you're the problem. The more you're on them, the worse they get. But when you step away, they problem solve. They figure it out for themselves and that's essentially the answer. Yeah. But we had to go to therapy to figure that out.
Yeah. Do you know what was so funny? Years ago, and this memory has just come to me and I laugh about it now, but I shouldn't laugh. Somebody said to us there was an equivalent of the super nanny in Dubai for spoiled expats. And probably like you, I was very, very aware here. My boys are surrounded with privilege. I want them to grow up knowing that, that is a gift, right? And it's not, and they might not have that all their life. And that they're blessed, but they have to work for what they get. And I've been very, very clear with that. But when they were little, there's this super nanny for expat brats. And somebody had said that it had worked wonders with their kids who were girls. And we should meet this woman. So we did a phone interview with her and she interviewed the kids who were expat brats. And then she turned on me and she told me it was because I fed them shit. And I'm normal, like, don't get me wrong. I think they'd had Weetabix in the morning and apparently Weetabix were bad, chocolate Weetabix were bad. But I'm very funny with, I don't like my McDonald's, blah, 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 a meal every night. And she turned this table on me that I shouted at her and put the phone down and left and stomped off. And I think she said to Mike, the problem in your household is your wife is volatile.
So if you didn't already have any kind of insecurities about motherhood.
Oh, I know. And also that whole, why is it always my fault? I'm already beating myself up about this. Why? Anyway, we never hired her again. Funnily enough, she didn't come into our family and our family fixed itself.
So and you've learned with experience. You've learned over the years what works and what doesn't work for your household.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is as well, I am not going to fall on my sword at 7 o'clock on a school morning because somebody wants chocolate Weetabix. Have chocolate Weetabix, get to school, end of. No.
It's survival at that time of the day. It really is.
Yeah.
So Katie, as someone who is interested in so many things and you're passionate about your career, your running, parenting, community work, you do so many things and comes back to the same question, can women have it all or can women do it all? What's your honest take on that?
I think women can do anything they want. They can't do everything. I think it is about choosing and having a sacrifice and knowing what percentage you're going to commit to each. So I do believe you can be a mother, have a career, have your fitness, have a group of friends, but you can't do them all on one day. And you can't do them all in one season. So I think you have to lean into what's working at that particular time. Does that make sense? So, your career ebbs and flows. Kids ebb and flow, they need you at different points. And I think, and your fitness ebbs and flows, right? You can't be full on all the time, although that's how I would choose to live my life, could I? So I think it's about understanding what's right in those moments. But I also think and this has been a very, very conscious effort in the last couple of years, is knowing what's giving back to you. So I used to choose to do everything, say yes to everything, but not everything fulfilled me. And not everything was best for me, for my family. So actually then really selectively listening to your intuition and saying what's taking me to where I want to go to.
And start cutting what doesn't.
Yeah. And unapologetically putting a ring around what doesn't and saying that's not for me. This isn't the season for this. I think that's really important.
That makes sense. So Katie, if you were to look back at this season of your life, and whether it's your career, your running, parenting, or community, what are you most proud of?
Proud of it all.
It's all been pretty inspirational. I can see why you would say that.
Yeah, I'm proud of it all. Like I stand here at 50 and I kind of look back and it's been a wonderful journey.
And I think you've been a wonderful role model to so many.
I can't believe you made me cry.
I didn't think you were going to cry. I didn't think about. I'd like to close by asking you if you could speak to the Katie, that little Katie growing up in Manchester, who didn't know that she would end up in the Middle East and, achieve all the amazing things that you went on to achieve. What would you say to her?
So I knew I was going to do amazing things at work, right? I think that's one thing from being about the age of 8. I used to drive home with my dad and I couldn't wait for the out of home, the billboards to go up down the side of the road every 2 weeks that they were changed. And it was at the time when silk cut advertising was leading the way, cigarette advertising of all things. I always remember Greenhole Whitley beer, and I used to get really excited about seeing the ads. So I knew I was going to do something amazing in the world of marketing. It was in me and I was passionate about it. The running thing has thrown me. And what I'd say at the age of 8 is I should have pushed myself more into my fitness, to that young person, that I didn't know I would get so much joy out of the health side of my life. I used to enjoy sport. But if I'd have known then what I know now, I would have done something like the Olympics. I would have pushed myself in a way that I could have stood on a world stage. And I do think I would have been capable of that, but I didn't know it then.
So you would have started earlier?
I would have committed to it earlier, I think. It was because of what my dad did. I was always interested in sport. I was a good squash player. It probably wasn't my passion, but I was good at it and I did it. And I think that's the lock. I don't think I found the passion of running. And what's really interesting is young girls don't run well. There's a period where they turn through puberty and their hips change and they feel heavier, that they actually believe they can't run. And that's one of the big challenges with women in sport generally, is that there is this shift between girlhood and womanhood, where in their heads they don't believe they can do it. But if they push through, and those that do and those that can and those that are supported to can become the Keely Hodgkinsons, or they become the world-class athletes of our time. And I think that's a really important message for young girls.
I think that's why we need run coaches and more of them.
Yeah. Maybe.
So thank you so much, Katie. As I said at the beginning of the conversation, I've always had a girl crush on you. And I think this conversation has just confirmed why I really find you truly inspirational. And I think if there's one thing that I would take away from this conversation is that you can do it all or have it all, as long as you prioritize what's important to you and cut what doesn't serve you. It's doable. It can happen. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For those of you who are listening and feel that there isn't enough time, enough energy, or enough of you to go around, I hope Katie's message shows us how it's all about prioritizing what's important and perhaps cutting what's not. And as always, if you've benefited from this conversation, please like and subscribe to Reflections and Realizations so that we can bring in more inspirational guests like Katie. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.